practical Sikh look at life's complicated questions. This is not a presentation of definitive answers or ideas, but an exploration of possibilities and debate. We're going to be looking at who is a Sikh, what does politics mean to a Sikh, what is the Anand Gauge, how do we raise children the Sikh way, and ultimately, what is death to a Sikh?
So, Guru Granth Sahib's approach is, if you say you are a Sikh, this is what you do. So as an individual who says I am a Sikh, he or she needs to then say, am I doing any of these things? So that's a very open-ended at a principle level answer. When it comes to the social and political elements, we have a criteria which Sikh Riyat Maryada puts out, but we must recognize the purpose there is more political. It's for representation reasons, and it is also to not allow what we generally call infiltrations for quote-unquote non-Sikhs coming in to vote out Sikhs, for example, in SGPC or in Gurdwara or other elections. So there the criteria is very clear. It says people who believe in Guru Granth Sahib, people who believe in the ideas of the 10 Gurus, people who are in aspiration to take Amrit one day to become a Khalsa, and they do not follow any other religion. So that becomes sort of an organizational way to look at it, community way to look at it, at a nation level look at it. The rest of it is principle driven, where people are self-identifying with being a Sikh.
There's a great insight into this from Professor Kaur Singh, who talks about a Sikh as being the victor in the race of life. And he traces that back to the historical use of the word Sikh from thousands of years ago in the subcontinent. And I always like that idea, because the victor in the race of life could still be somebody who's just starting out. And it could be somebody who has ultimately given themselves over in Sikhi and become a member of the Khalsa. It encompasses both of them. It's someone who's already won because they've taken that step to accept the Guru as their light from the darkness.
Guru is twofold. So I think Guru Granth Sahib Ji is Jogo Jogatal and cannot be changed, cannot change a matra, cannot change anything. So that's Guru Granth, and I think the Guru Panth is fluid. And we're sovereign and we're self-determining, and we have been given the ability and the right and the responsibility to change in real time in response to the world. So I think that's the future of Sikhi, and we really have to be open to it. We have to be open to allowing ourselves to form part of the Guruship, and that means responding in real time to can gay people get married at the Gurdwara? Can women do Kirtan at Darbar Sahib? If those answers are not prescriptive in Gurbani, then they're up to the Panth to decide, and we have to be that and diverse decision-making body. And I think that means that maybe it doesn't look like what it looks like today. So we keep our kakar, we keep parts of our that are beautiful and consensus-based and there. But then I think it can also mean that people of different races are Sikhs. I think it can mean like the color of maybe your sweater can be different. I know we get so we can go so much to one side where it's like, we're only allowed to wear these two colors, and that's not okay. I think where clothing and fashion and all of that evolves, if it's not prescribed in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, then we do have the ability to come to a consensus around it.
I think there's a wonderful thing we have in Sikhi where Guru Sahibs have given us the Panth. And so by membership of the Panth, not just being a member of the Khalsa, but a member of the Panth, one can be included into the decision-making of the community, representation of the community, speaking to others on our behalf, but also representing us to the world and sun-dried, not maybe directly, but indirectly sometimes. And that is possible by membership of the Panth, which needs to be distinct from somebody themselves making an individual statement or choice to state that they're Sikh. I don't think any of us should ever be in a position where we're drawing the line to say that you can't call yourself a Sikh. But what we can do is we can mark out who is a member of the Panth.
First thing is there has to be accountability starts with self-accountabilities. But we know we live in a very real world where self-accountabilities are not enough in any area of life. And that's where you have external accountabilities. So let's use something we are more familiar with. Anyone can be a citizen in a country as long as they follow the basic spirit ideas. But if you want to become a representatives in that community, whether at a government level or represent the governments on behalf to the other governments like an ambassadors or senators or MPs or MLAs, these different terms we use, then there are different sets of criterias. And there are moving criterias depending on the level of representation. Something similar is in the Sikh fold. We are a very large tent. And that's why if for whatever reason you say you are a Sikh, we'll say you are a Sikh. But if you want to speak on behalf of the Sikh, work on behalf of the Sikh, represent the Sikhs, there will be many more criterias where we will go beyond self-accountabilities, and there has to be panthic accountabilities. And that's where I think the waters are muddied. We end up taking certain definitions and we start applying it to every arena of life. That's not how it works. The definitions are for particular purpose, for particular set of reasons, and we need to be very, very clear about when those definitions are being applied.
But it's a very, very muddied line. And the best example of this comes to us from the Guru's lives themselves, from our history, where if you consider the Udasis, when Baba Siri Chand leads them, and during the time of Guru Amar Das, they're ousted and considered a heretical sect. But by the time of Guru Hargobind Sahib, the Udasis are permitted to partake in Sangat deliberations once more, because the time has changed and the people have, from within that group, have changed and have become more acceptable, if we like, or are no longer seen as being othered. And so I think it's a very difficult thing. It's something that we have to do all the time. The system we have in place at the moment is not ideal, but it does exist. And that is that from the position of the Jathedar of the Akal Takht, if you have been excommunicated, or if the instruction has been given not to associate with certain people because they are fringe or they are cultish or they somehow disrespect and disregard the Panth's opinion, then we all supposed to follow that. So we do have a system. It's just maybe not the best system we could have in a 21st century world. But that's upon all of us to change that. And like I said, it's something that's supposed to evolve with time. You're supposed to look at the time, place you're in, and decide as a Panth, how do we make a decision now? And how do we get people around us to be within the fold and outside of the fold?
Like a fish in water. I didn't know I was a Sikh because of how I was raised. I just thought that's what life was. I thought everyone went to the Gurdwara. I thought everyone went to Kirtan class. I grew up in Brampton, Ontario, so most people I knew did go to Kirtan class. I thought your family was your Sangat and your Sangat was your family. And I think everyone has an ethnocentricity where they think their normal is just the normal. My Brampton bubble burst when I went to university. And that was the first time I met people that didn't believe in God. And I still use terms like God. I met people that didn't believe in God. I met people that, and I had been given Amrit when I was 11. And so it had been such a long time since I had answered questions like, why do you do that? Oh, you don't eat meat, or you don't, why do you cover your head? And I went away to a small town in Canada, St. Catharines, predominantly white people. And I started answering these questions again, and I had to know the answers, and I had to know the answers in a way that satisfied people that had no idea what Sikhi was. And so I think that in my life is my defining moment where I was forced to find those answers for myself, and I had to really do a deep dive and examine myself, and I realized I really do love this, and so it's interesting. So my point of consent of choosing Sikhi wasn't when I was given Amrit, it was when I went to university.
First time I really thought about whether I am a Sikh or not was in 84, when there was external attack. I was 12 in India, in Jhansi, in UP, and I'm like, why am I being targeted? Because until then, we were part of the larger populations, and we just happened to be following a little bit of a different norm than our neighbors, right? And then my high school days is where I would say I had a conscious journey. Like, okay, I've been born in a Sikh family. The state has identified me as a Sikh to kill me, but am I a Sikh? Where do I stand? And this is where I would say my first inquiry into Sikhi really started. Beyond doing part, beyond going to samagams, this was about reading, consciously learning. This is where Bhai Gurdas becomes very real, where he says, have you tested the Guru if this Guru is for you? So, this is a relationship between a Sikh and a Guru at a starting point, I would say, where if a protege has not, and I hadn't until this point, until my high school years, has not even decided if this mentor is for them, it's the positional or forced relationship. So I would say my high school years, culminating into my college years, a lot of readings, lots of meetings, lots of asking of questions, including when I decided to take Amrit, asking really uncomfortable and tough questions to the Panch Pyare at the time. Because to me, it was a conscious decision. I was going through my own journey of religions and philosophies, or being, agnostics to atheists, all of that. And at some point, during my college and high school days is where the solidification of conscious choice happened for me. And Amrit was part of it, but that's just a ceremony. That's a public ceremony for giving allegiance, but actually understanding the rights and responsibilities of being part of the Sikh nation.
But if I had a time machine and go 100 years from now and I see what they're defining as a Sikh, it may look alien to me. But essentially, what will be underneath that will be somebody laying their mat before the Guru and saying, Meri mat thori, I want the Guru's mat. And that's ultimately what I think is behind being a Sikh, to have the attitude and the comprehension, or the attempt to comprehend the bigger picture, the greater canvas that is existence.
I grew up with a lot of people around me who were not interested in politics, and then I also had a handful of those who were very much so. Politics is almost a bad word for a lot of Sikhs. Some say phrases like, I stay out of politics and focus on the spiritual. On the other hand, I hear how Sikhs are dedicated to human rights and justice and political change. So how do we have two very different responses?
Whether or not you choose to engage in political systems, you are living in them. You don't get to, I wish we could consent to, like, today I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be political, but we don't get to do that.
The system that exists, you can't run away from life. You've got to get involved, get stuck in.
So if I decided today that I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to do my bot and I'm not going to be political, I'm still living in capitalism. I'm still living in the impacts of colonialism. I'm still being impacted by racism. I'm still participating in these systems, complicit in these systems, impacted by them. So I can't be apolitical. I can pretend, but I can't. Let's say you hit Babar Vani and you see Guru Nanak Dev Ji standing up to an oppressor, and you see his harsh words and his criticisms of politicians and Raje. How are you going to read that without being political? I'm curious to those folks who say that they're not.
I think the way that political infrastructure has existed since time immemorial, since societies formed, has always been the same, where it consists of mudslinging, and it consists of Machiavellian scheming. We want to stay away from it because we see it as being dirty. The reality is that politics is what we make it. So how we engage with politics and whether we're able to keep our demeanor and our candor at a standard that we find acceptable to our own conscience, that onus is on us. We're not the only community to behave like this, but we're the only community that has ever been given a mandate by the founders of their way of life in how to deal with things. Sarbat da pala. And we are not living up to that standard. The system that exists is one that we choose to make ourselves. The Guru showed us this through his own creation of towns and cities and citadels and their engagements with power, not from shying away from it, which was traditionally the way that people of faith or the people of philosophical thinking would do.
For most world religions, social justice is not part of their spirituality. They actually are importing that in post-1970s, including in Christianity. Or even their just war theories were done a long time ago by St. Augustine, just to borrow an example. In Sikhi, it has been from day one that these are simultaneous, concurrent, or symbiotic relationships of politics and religion, what we now call politics and religion, which Guru Nanak Sahib used the word Peer and Meer, which means people who just identified with particular spirituality or people who just identified with particular political theories. You know, when we say Meeri Peeri, Guru Nanak is the one who used the word Meer and Peer for the first time, and Meeri Peeri becomes institutionalized in Sikhi, which basically means political spiritual. In fact, it doesn't even say spiritual first. Now, what does that really mean? If you look at Ek Oankar through Guru Prasad, when the ideas of creativeness, deathlessness, fearlessness, enemylessness come in, self-reliance in terms of your knowledge comes in, all this is politics. I think what has happened in our communities, community at large, outside of Sikh community as well, the word politics is misunderstood. People have reduced this to be mudslinging or something which is what we call extremities from anarchies to alt-rights. Well, no. Politics is really about governance. Politics is really about rights issues, what we now call rights, whether it's human rights, civil rights, economic rights. It's the whole ecology of how to govern ourselves as people. We have positions on each issue of life, from sexuality to politics, from spirituality to economic theories, from political revolutions to cultural revolutions, from music to arts. We have a particular worldview, and politics is about which worldview gets used at what time, whether it is to collect taxes or how to spend that money which we have used to collect taxes. So Sikhi is very clear on it. Our doctrine is it needs to play with the Ek Oankar idea. It needs to adopt this oneness idea. How do we look at each being as an equal? So politics is inseparable from Sikhi.
It has to go hand in hand. And that's why the 6th Guru Nanak adorned both the Meeri and the Peeri Kirpana and the Talwara at the same time.
If you try and be political without rooting yourself in a regular practice of Nam and Bani, you won't be acting out of love. Sometimes I think of a helium balloon on a string. It's just what tethers you. If you've seen a helium balloon let out into the sky, it's gone. And if you see one on a string, it'll go this way, it'll go that way, but it's not going too far. You're not going to be self-destructive.
From Guru Nanak's eyes, if I look at it, what Guru Sahib is saying is, look, you are equally political as you are spiritual. So start exercising both at the same time, depending on your growth in both areas, and integrate your spirituality with politics or integrate your politics with spirituality, whichever way you want to look at it. So what that means is this: if we don't invest time in understanding Sikh worldview, which has both components and many other components, then we will never be able to implement it. So first example of that I would give is, or maybe the largest example, do we even know the Sikh worldview? Because Sikh worldview is based on Naam. That's the culture we produce. This is the word which repeats quite often in Guru Granth Sahib. And it was the culture of Naam is what Guru Sahib established. Whether and how to pray, what to pray to, where not to pray to, all these different elements of spirituality, or whether in politics, what kind of a state should there be, what kind of representatives in the state should be. At the time, there used to be kingdoms, so criteria were created on the qualification of who needs to be a ruler. So it's the worldview from a Sikh lens need to be understood, instead of bringing, what is happening in UK, what is happening in America, what's happening in India, applying the political theories of postmodernism to whatever other isms we use. No. If you want to do contribution from Sikh angle, you will understand all those things, and then you will say, in the Naam culture, its interpretation at this point in history, at this moment, in this situation is this. That will be the real contribution.
We are not thinking for everyone. We're thinking for how I would do something to help my community. And how I would do things in the way that I think Sikhi is. That's why you get all the rhetoric in discussions around Sikhi and politics. Always goes back to Maharaja Ranjit Singh's reign was a great reign. Everyone was allowed to be what they... Has anyone ever actually looked into it deeper? Do you understand what their form of capital punishment was or wasn't? Do we understand how they had taxation, how people's lives were impinged upon, and similarly how they were given freedoms? No, we haven't even looked at our own historical references for this, let alone looking at the rest of the world. And yet you want to go and rule them. That's not how you're not going to get into power like that. You're not going to be able to change anything like that. If Sikhs don't bother to take the time to learn more about Mr. Jones next door and Shadrach, who runs the corner shop down the road, and Mrs. Sharma, who teaches at the school, if we don't take the time to learn about who they are, what their thoughts are, what their fears are, and what their desires are, then we can't rule them. We can't rule on their behalf. And we can't ultimately elevate ourselves to a place politically where we will be able to affect change.
It started out after 1849. Nobody until 1849 and explicitly after 1947, nobody in Punjab, which is where 99% of the Sikh population lived, no Sikh, no Hindu, no Muslim, even the British after 1849, they were very, very clear on what Raj Karega Khalsa meant. It is only between 1849 and 1947, between the annexation of Punjab and the partitioning of Punjab into India and Pakistan, you have series of things which are being brought in. We had earlier divided allegiances too. People worked for different systems, but they all knew what the Panth's aspiration is, what the Khalsa's aspiration is. But in this annexation of British period, that slowly got changed to the level where when Sardar Kaur Singh even wanted to talk about it in the Hour of Sword, that publication got banned. The recitation of Raj Karega Khalsa got banned for the first time as Sri Harwinder Sahib, and yet that ban is still in effect. Think about that for a second. The aspiration which was decided for us or vocalized and articulated for us in the words of Bhai Nand Lal Goya, which actually Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj is answering his question and saying this. So this confusion since 1947 has gone beyond India. It has gone global, where we do not understand what Raj Karega Khalsa means, and we do debates on whether it means the whole of India. This is what people say, or does it mean whichever country we live in? I think this is the engagement piece. Capturing political power is a milestone, which is a Khalsa aspiration. We can go through cycles. We don't exist to rule. We don't exist to capture political power, but we believe in capturing political power so we can implement the right governance system to bring the culture of Naam in whichever communities we live in. So the conversation is not about we must not be political or not capture political power. The conversation is about when is the right time to do it when you are dealing with unjust states. So the Sikh history is cyclical. When there was a just state, we did not capture full powers. We worked with reformations. When the state became, whether it was the Mughal state or the Indian state now or the British earlier, now it will be the governments we are dealing with globally. When they do unjust things, we should be working with people to recapture the power in a different paradigm. And within that paradigm, we should bring Naam culture in there. Of course, we forget about this, but this is where Ardas becomes very important. The daily reminder twice is because of that. There is a reason why this Dohra, which is uncontested, by the way, because it is recorded in a Bani called Tankhanama by Bhai Nand Lal Goya, which its earlier versions were called Nasihatnama. And the whole context of this Bani has about 3 sections. One section talks about the Khalsa Rahat. Second one talks about certain procedural matters on who is a Khalsa, like it's a qualification given. And the third part is about Raj and why the Raj must be established and how it will be established. So this particular Dohra comes from that Bani. And this Bani, the Panth decided, since the time of Baba Banda Singh Bahadur, which means it goes back to 1710, which is a contemporary of Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj, that we will be reciting this regardless of which situation we are in.
And so every day you do the Ardas, you should be reading the Ardas and thinking of the words that are being said aloud in the Ardas. It will remind you, you can't run away from this world. You've got to get knee deep into it.
Our end goal in Sikhi is not to rule, but rule is available to us as an instrument within Guru Granth Sahib as a principle, and historical precedents are there that we do capture political powers to fight the unjust state, and we must maintain this in contemporary 2020 realities as well, that we work to change the system. If the system is thoroughly corrupt and enough is enough, which in Guru Gobind Pasha's dictum is we have exhausted every other means, then we must create alliances or by ourselves fight to create sovereignties, even if we are defeated in it. It's okay to get defeated temporarily, but the very idea that we fight for it is the Guru-given idea, and we must maintain that. If we want to self-identify as Sikh, and as a Panth, if it wants to exert its credibility and authority to the large extent of the Sikhs.
With young people, my profession, I'm a child and youth care practitioner. We talk about virtual life space and we talk about meeting people where they're at. So how would or how should or what should a Sikh response be in this situation? Requires, I'm going to quote Mumford & Sons, urgency but not haste.
And I will love with urgency but not with haste.
So if you love with urgency but not with haste, you're feeling the deep pain of the moment, but you're not doing a knee-jerk reaction. It's not haste. It's stop, listen, think. Your constant nitnem is there. Your constant engagement with Bani is there. And you've actually understood what our history is, where we've fallen on situations like this before, and then you have a calculated response.
Imagine a politician who's a Nitnemi Sikh. Their morning Nitnem, their evening Nitnem at sundown, and the last thing before they go to sleep will be a constant reminder every day of the standard that they need to uphold themselves to, and the deals that they make, how that needs to fit with their life as a Sikh.
This is when you start to say, is this what Guru Hargobind Pasha was doing when he fought his first battle? Or is this why Guru Nanak Pasha decided to be jailed along with other people and Guru Hargobind Pasha? Is this the reason Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj created this dictum of exhausting all means? So that's the Guru period. And we see this in the post-Guru period, whether it is this history of Sikhs in America, Canada, Singapore, India. You start to see the interpretation at that moment. In the moment, there are movements. In those movements, you give your contributions. So it's engagement with the movements of the time, which asks you to refresh your Miri Piris, which you have been learning over the years, but now you get to implement them.
There's been a lot of conversations about the Anand Karaj, what it is and why we do it. It feels like it's an issue of inclusion and exclusion, but rather than focusing on who can and who can't participate in the Anand Karaj, what exactly is it? What makes the Anand Karaj unique to other standard marriage ceremonies?
Like outside of the things that we've been taught, like that in the Western, like ek ladki ko dekha. That's not Western, that's actually Eastern. Outside of that, like warm fuzziness, in Anand Karaj, you decide to live in Grist together, but both oriented towards the Guru. Like if it's a solar system, your Guru is your sun. I think that needs to be solidified in front of your Sangat and in front of your Guru. It mirrors a lot Amrit Sanjar, in that sense that it's just a physical way of expressing that commitment to live in Grist and to do that with your Guru at your heart and your center.
In Anand Karaj, the commitment two individuals are giving is to the Guru, not to each other. As a deduction, they're doing it to each other. But in Anand Karaj, the lavas are done. People bow to the Guru, they circumambulate the Guru, they do ardas to the Guru, they listen to the hukum from the Guru, and everything else is a cultural or other things which you may choose to do. But in Sikh ceremony, the commitment is to the Guru.
So in our case, it was because we're a blended family. It was all four of us. So my two stepkids and my husband and myself. It was really important for us to go in front of our family and our Sangat. And it was really important for the kids to see that as well. All of your regular decisions, and if you're a blended family, all of your blended family decisions have to be made with Guru Sahib at the center. And that can't be done unless you're connected to the Bani.
What they're agreeing to is to grow together. To Ek Jyot Doi Murti Tan Pir Kaiya Soy is the oft repeated line, is one of the lines of the sloks, which essentially means so far we are two bodies and now we want to become one light. And one light is the same idea from Ek Oankar onwards, and the Guru is the one who helps us become the witness to that light. Gur Sakhi Jyot Pragat Hoye. We don't know how to bring out this light. It is within us. It's around us. Similarly, in a couple, it is within us. Now we are committing to bring it out together and the Guru as a guide.
When we start putting limitations on ourselves, is when we start causing ourselves problems. And so if we just think with one mindset, I want somebody who's been to university, I want somebody who's going to be really good with my parents, I want somebody who's going to want to lead a balanced life. When we make those kind of statements, ultimately what we're doing is we're digging a hole for ourselves.
I think the most important thing to remember is everything is secondary to that moment when you are in Guru Maharaj Hajuri with the Bani. So yeah, go ahead and have it's okay if other Sikhs disagree, but I'm going to say go ahead and have your jago and your manya and your Amritari. People have pre-receptions now instead of hanging receptions. Celebrate all of that. Celebrate with your friends and family. But if you're mentally preparing yourself, then it means to me adding the Lama to your Nitnem in the morning. So you read them and you understand them. So the first time you're trying to understand what that Bani isn't while you're walking around. Real story, when we were doing our Anandkar, during the first Naam, I did a double take because I had come in and sit down and so many people had come in after me. There's 2,000 people, more than 2,000 people at our wedding. And I didn't realize they were in the room. So I got up and I started walking and I looked at the Sangat and I looked again. And yes, for a moment, my mind went away from the Bani. And so you don't want to be walking and being oh, what is that vocab word? Or what does that mean?
I think this is where there is a contemporary debate and there is a traditional answer. Traditional answer was very simple on this, that if this commitment is to the Guru, two of you are going to make, then go discover Guru beforehand. You can't do that as a last minute for ceremonial purposes only. So traditionally, that's why there were no marriages done among the Sikhs until there was Amrit taken. So it was no confusion about which Guru both of people have committed to. Now in contemporary world, this has changed. And this primarily has been changing in last 70, 80 years as well. So you will see there is a lot of stuff in the post-British period. Some systems were broken or confused and some got revived with certain changes, but some of them just stayed confused. And this is the state we are in. So now we selectively apply to people who should go through an Ankaraj. No, we must not do that. Even if you think you are a Sikh, even if you have taken Amrit, we have not really had that conversation about how are we going to grow together with this one mandate, because people have different ideas of Amrit as well. They had different ideas earlier, but not the aspirational end was very clear. Now even the aspirational ends are being debated, as we talked about earlier, within the Miri Piri parameters. So the way to prepare for this will be to have a conversation, regardless of where you are in your life. It's okay. Many things are not working for the community, but we get to revive the traditions and we get to add to the tradition to make it better. So those who want to have an Ankaraj done, even if you're doing it for your parents, even if you're doing it for yourself or for one of the spouses, and I've gone through all of those things, I'm very familiar with this. I think the ask minimum should be, wouldn't you want to make this the most powerful day for your, not just in terms of which cake you had and how you looked, but also in terms of emotional and psychological angle? If you do, then have that conversation as well. What does it mean to grow together with the Guru? What element of the Guru are we discussing here? Are we making it very superficial? Are we making it just ceremonial? Are we actually making it very mentor-like, that this is the training we are seeking from the Guru to develop together?
Nobody knows literally who you're going to end up with. You have no idea if you're going to be married to someone for a short space of time, or if you're going to be married to them for the rest of both of your lives. You have no idea what it's going to feel like, how hard you're going to have to work on it. Those things outside of your head. So ultimately it's better not to have too many limitations, to not think too specifically about the type of person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. Much better than that is to think that really what life's goal is, or lifetime's goal, is for your Atma to merge with Param Atma. And that would be the true Anant Karaj that one can engage with.
When you go through disagreements and your hurdles to develop together, aspirations to continue working towards the same dream, do you still invoke Guru to make decision making? Sure, one can seek counselings, one can read certain self-help books, one can go cite a particular YouTube video, whether it's a Sikh or a non-Sikh, but at the end of the day, is Guru your guide? Because that's what you both agreed to. If Guru is not your guide, so I've had to apply that. When we go through conflicts in our lifestyles, and we have 2 kids as well, when we were in the first 5 years of our lives and we didn't have kids, we had those conversations, and we continue to have those conversations. Because marriage is an ordeal. Everything is not going to be hunky-dory all the time. In fact, that's what contracts are. Marriage is a contract. I mean, if you want to use that term, it's a contract with the Guru. And what are contracts done for? Not for when things are great, when things are not so good. So make sure you invoke the Guru when things are not so good in the marriage. And who do you listen to at that time? Your mother-in-law or your mother? Your Gurdwara Granthi or your friend? So all those are data points. But which data point matters most? The Guru. And that's what Anant Karaj is. And that's how I like to invoke it in my life as well.
For me, that was non-negotiable, that we would both be second in our relationship. That the first thing would be Guru Sahib in our home and in our life. Because if you are getting up every day for one purpose and your partner is getting up every day for a completely different purpose, I think that makes the logistics of life harder. I think it can work, but I think it wouldn't have worked for me. So like, again, every decision that we make, from like how we spend our money, how we buy groceries, how we operate in this world, how many cars are we going to have, what companies do we think is ethical to purchase stuff from, all of those decisions are made with our Sikhi in mind. So I can imagine that it would be very difficult, and for me impossible, to operate day to day without someone who was doing everything for Guru Sahib. Like sometimes I'll even say like, if there's like a real ethical thing, I'll be like, do we believe that? Or like we can answer for each other because we know we believe the same thing. Yeah. Or like someone comes to me with a new writer and they'll be like, can you endorse this researcher? And I'll be like, do we support him or her? And then, yeah, we know.
And Anant Karaj was supposed to be that. I choose that with this person, I am going to commit to the Guru. And where I fall, they will pick me up. And where they fall, I will pick them up. And we will learn together, and we will grow together. One of us may go faster than the other. Our pace may not always match. We may not be synchronized together, but we are doing it together. And in that will come a great amount of learning. In historically, that's what Anant Karaj was all about. Committing to the Guru with one other person that you make a choice to be with. One of the key pieces of advice is to not have expectations of one another. When we have too many expectations, we either don't live up to them or we exceed them. And that becomes the root of many of our problems. The hardest thing for me to do through my married life and the rest of my life is one of the pieces of advice I can give, which is to learn to listen. We can hear a lot of the time, but actually being able to listen, leading on to empathize with somebody else, that would resolve a lot of the problems that are occurring in our society today. As with everyone else in the world, we decided that weddings were going to become this event.
When I was referring to we need to become current in our approaches, this is an issue Sikh world hadn't dealt with earlier. Because for whatever reasons, the way patriarchal society worked or the way things were in the larger family environments, when it comes to abuse level things, I think the answer is very clear. You need to go seek professional help. But let's say it's not abusive and it is like a contract. Well, what do? Just like everything else in life. Look, we are breaking more contracts in everything else in life as well, not just in marriages. Look at the number of bankruptcies of businesses. Look at the number of unenforceable contracts in the world. In America, there are 3 lawyers per 1 doctor. Just think about this. So it's a lifestyle. The whole paradigm has changed in the world, not just in the Sikh world. And we are a microcosm of the global world. And in our microcosm, we invoke the Guru, but we actually are not interpreting the Guru. So we behave just like anyone else. So yes, we are breaking those contracts as well. And until we figure out from a serious interpretation, which is implementable in terms of rehabilitations or counselings and learnings from the Guru, this is another one of those unfortunate things where the divorce rates are high, there are abusive relationships, or we will say non-functional or unfunctional relationships. And they will continue until we actually seriously take the paradigm of learning from the Guru.
The ability to walk away from an Anand Karaj has been liberating for so many women, where those situations were toxic, where there was violence. For so many folks that would have stayed in places where the Guru was no longer there or where they were no longer the same people, there's just so many reasons why it wouldn't be something you could see through. I think that there is room. I married someone who had been married before. So I think that there's room in Sikhi for that. And I've put my name and my life to the fact that I believe that. But I also think that Sikhi, and especially the Anand Karaj, holds you to a far higher standard and a far greater need to see it through as much as you possibly can before you decide that this isn't working. Yeah. And I also think that's one of the differences between like a Western marriage and an Anand Karaj is like on the days that you aren't in this for each other, there's still a whole other reason that you did this.
When it comes to raising Sikh children, we know there's Punjabi and Sikh classes at the Gurdwara. By my experience, they don't always work. Is there a way to properly raise children through a Sikh lens? If so, how do we do it? Lots of young people make a choice that Sikhi isn't for them. How do we encourage a lifetime of active participation in Sikhi and ideological implementation in our children's lives?
Let's apply the Guru Nanak model here. There comes a point where they are their own beings. So what is that point? It's directly related to case by case basis. It's directly related to their psychological development. It used to be at the time of Guru Nanak, people used to get married by the age they're 12. 100 years ago, it became around 16 or 18. When I was growing up as a kid, the most countries decided, 18 is the age. In most places in the world, the psychologists are agreeing, we don't know. They are able to make their own conscious choices and combine that with the legal responsibilities of the parents. I'm going to add a third factor, the Sikh responsibilities of a parent. It's a complex scenario. So somewhere between the ages of, 14, 15 to somewhere between 19 and 21, there comes a point where my job as a parent or both spouses' job as a parent is, have we given them enough strong wings so they can take a better flight than I have taken, and let them take their own flight rather than telling them how to fly anymore. I think it used to happen around 8th grade now. It's shifting even earlier. I think it's happening between 6th and 7th. I think we actually insult their intelligence. I really do believe that. You take out exceptional kids. Those are not the ones you design systems for, right? In 5th grade in most countries, at least in America, in most counties, they have sexual education. And we, even in most camps, at the age of 18, 19, 20, 21, or retreats, can't even have a healthy discussion on sexuality, whereas even Gurbani is having it. What does that tell you? We have, the earlier discussion we were having on politics, we skew everything. We even skew our spirituality. We don't even know what a spiritually healthy human being is. and the spiritually healthy human being is aware of, things around them, whether they're political, whether they're social. They are not vulgar, but they are very sensitive. And that's the part which we have not invested in enough, in my opinion. We are not sensitive to the real human emotions or the real political needs of people or the real blank needs of people. So we need to become more sensitive rather than doctrinal and regimented.
It is really hard. You're up against so many competing versions of the world, and one where Sikhi is not dominant. So our kids go to school, they are not getting any Sikh content there. There's everything they engage in online is not the message that we would curate for them necessarily.
Ultimately, all of these things, like you said, it will come up to self-identification, but even grander than that is the concept of hukum. If it's written that an individual will become a Sikh and will become a Sikh who is much closer to the Guru than they had been in previous lifetimes or other Sikhs around them, that's something that's outside of our control. That's something that's outside of our hands. All we can do is try to give them a steer. You can try and give them the best tools to use to make the most of what they have.
Before I was a parent, I would have said, well, here's this and here's that, and step one and step two. And now that I'm a parent, I will say, I have no idea. And I am in no place to give advice. I can't remember her name now, but there's a person who talks about good enough parenting. She's like, you can give your kids a roof and some food and make sure that they have good attachments and they feel loved, but really your kids are not going to listen to you. It really, the best thing you can do for them is like pick a good neighborhood, make sure they have sangat, make sure their friends are talking about Sikhi, make sure it's cool to keep your gaze, make sure it's normal to do kirtan, and then accept that there is a point where they're going to have to pick the path for themselves the same way that you did. And this is really hard, but accept that they might not. And what does it mean? What does love look like then? And what does parenting look like then? So you try your absolute hardest up until then. And then there's like a million practical things you can do, right? Like Bart and Kirtan and all of those things. But I would say, make sure a good peer group that makes Sikhi normal and okay and cool. And then just take a deep breath. And as a parent, be very kind to yourself.
Each family unit has to decide for themselves and determine how they're going to raise the children in order to give them an introduction into the Sikh way of life. Broadly speaking, what every family should be doing is having that conversation, because that conversation almost doesn't happen. People raise children, not just Sikhs, but all people around the world raise children largely in the way that they were raised themselves or countering the way that they were raised themselves. And that is not having a conversation about how you're going to raise your child. Really, what Sikhs need to be doing is thinking about the community that they're interacting with, whether those children are going to be going to schools where their first language is English or Spanish or French or Hindi or Mandarin, whatever it might be. Those Sikhs need to think to that locality, that area, and start to work out, well, what cultural references, what background knowledge are they going to be getting from those circles, from that societal education? And then those parents need to be thinking about, or that family unit needs to be thinking about, okay, this is how we will introduce Sikhi to our child then, to complement that.
Consistency, living what you ask your kids to live, modeling that. So if they see, no matter what happens, that, you guys do Bhat every day together, no matter what, no matter how angry or busy or whatever someone is, that's something we do. I also find that we're in a world now where everyone talks about emotional regulation and mindfulness and all of those things. But Bot will always recenter us. So no matter where anyone is in their day, it brings everyone back to like a place of like, okay. And that's in our house, the schedule is like that us and then dinner. And it's just been a really good way to live your life. Yeah, consistency. Our kids are an extension of Waheguru the same way we are. And they're given to us for a short amount of time to share that Sikhi with them. And then you do get to a point where they're always your sangat, but then maybe they, like I can think of with my parents now, I call them by their names. I definitely share more with them as an adult than I did as a kid. There has to be a healthy transition into where you stop trying to parent or you stop trying to do things in those ways. But then I also think in some ways you really will always, you'll always be in that position, and you'll always, like my Babaji was 92 and was still crying out for his mom because he was very, very disabled at the end and just bedridden. And Ma Takari, that was his mom's name, and she couldn't hear and she couldn't speak. And so he would just say like, my Ma Takari, I can see my Ma Takari. And I don't think parents ever truly stop parenting. And I don't think as a kid, like of my parents, I'm not still ready to let go of the idea that someone is there in the world for me no matter what.
One of the key things that both my wife and I do with our daughter is we make sure that we give her time every single day. There's something that we're teaching her from Sikh history, Sikh culture, or Sikh ideology every single day. She has heard the Kirtan Soila every day of her life since she was born. So much so that she recites it now, even though she can't read it from Gurmukhi script, she can't read it from an English Roman version. She has naturally imbibed it. She's learnt it phonetically. And in seeing her do that, it showed me a way in which parents can do something. It's do a little bit every single day. And the main part of that is Bani. Pick a Shabad and listen to it, listen to different versions of it, different Kirtanis singing it, and pick one of those one a month. By the end of, a year of doing that, your kid has been exposed to 12 Shabads, and you would be astounded if they're a preteen, anything from, 2 or 3 years old up until about 11 or 12. You would be astounded at how many of the chorus lines that are Hautoka they actually remember, purely through phonetic transmission. And that's key that we've found with raising our daughter. Every day she's given something new. She's being exposed to something.
Like one of the things that surprised me the most was I had all of these ideas about like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And, my kids will speak Punjabi and my kids will go to Kirtan class. When you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning so you can get yourself to work and Sandra's making everyone's lunch and I'm cleaning and you yelled 3 times and someone's still not in the shower. And then by the time you get everyone out the door, you're like doing bot on the way to school. You're like, nothing, like, and then you come home. Did we make dinner? Someone has a ukulele class. Did you remember to walk the dog? When it comes down to it, like how little the time is that you actually get to raise your own kids beyond the logistics of everyday life, it's probably like 5 minutes. So like you think you're like, oh, we'll do this every day and we'll do that every day. And the pandemic life is totally chill, but non-pandemic life, the actual, like when you break down your day where you're not at work, not at school, not trying to keep your house running, it's like that us and maybe a little bit extra. That's the time you get to give Sikhi to your kids. So then it also has to be like embedded in the culture of your household.
The biggest thing they can do is, I'm going to break it in 2 parts. One is, obviously, you're going to already do the best you can in terms of their education, in terms of their Sikhi, so I'm not even going to go there. The one thing you can do is let go at some point. Prepare yourself for that day. Start learning about your kids psychologically more, emotionally more, and figure out where that point is to let go. Until then, you're pushing very hard. and you're trying to make them the high performer and not a balanced individual, you're trying to make them high performer, whether it's in academia, whether it's in Sikhi, whether it's in sports, whatever your child might need, don't apply a blanket thing. So figuring out that day and being prepared for that day. Second thing is stop blaming yourself. This is what they call paradox of responsibility. You're not Vaheguru, so you're not responsible for everything. But you are a parent, so you're responsible for certain things. And those responsibilities are that you have done the best things possible around you as a parent. And at some point when you have let go, stop regretting. Stop saying that this is your fault if something your kid is not doing. Don't make it about you. This is part of the ego. This is what Gurbani talks about. This is where Guru Nanak model is important. You let go. They live their own lives, and your journey has always been, individual's journey has always been to be like Vaheguru. And part of that journey, there is a period where you're taking some of that time and you're trying to give your kids, your offsprings, how they can become like Vaheguru. And when that journey, that milestone at certain point leaves your situation, is not part of your larger equation, you go back to your larger path of life, which is instead of just feeling like becoming a Vaheguru, you're actually getting closer to being like Vaheguru.
The COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 really reminds us how death is right around the corner. Everyone seems to have known someone who's passed away due to COVID-19, and with funeral arrangements being minimized or completely unavailable, what exactly are we trying to do when we have a Sikh funeral? And what does death mean to us?
Comprehending death goes to the heart of what it means to be a Sikh. Gurbani tells us we go through 3 stages. You go through childhood, you go through youth, and then you go through old age, Budhippa. And nobody wants to get to Budhippa. Nobody wants to get to those older ages because they know now death is coming much, much more closer. And that is something that we are unwilling to appreciate in our lives. Hence why many of us, myself included, take Khandedi Paul and we say we are reborn, we are now beyond death. But we're just choosing mere words. That isn't the reality of how our minds are comprehending death. For the Guru-inspired Sikh, the one that has started to adopt Gurmat as their mental state, they start to they don't need to grieve as much. In fact, they reach a certain state where they don't grieve at all because they recognize that X Singh or Y Kaur, who they knew their whole life or some of their life and who has now passed away, was not actually X Singh or Y Kaur. That was the bodily form that their Atma took on this particular moment of their journey. And that it may be that in a previous life or a life yet to come, that same individual will impact upon your Atma as not somebody you had love for, not somebody that you had a positive relationship with, but one of the complete opposite. It could be your greatest dushman. And that kind of Gurmat-inspired thinking needs to return into the way that Sikhs practice. We need to remove ourselves from the culture of the subcontinent to wail and lament the demise of any individual. And we need to start looking at it for what it is, that we are mere dots on a much, much grander canvas, and that this is but one life that we had to lead.
There's a lot in Bani about cycles of birth and death. There's a lot of conversation about, are those literal? Do we actually go into reincarnation? Or is it talking about, I'm alive when I remember you and I die a million deaths because I forget you every day? I don't know if I have the answer. Do I think I'm actually going to die? Is there going to be a literal judge? Is there going to be a slideshow of my life? And then someone's going to say, you're coming back as a starfish? I don't know. I always think of Jalte ubaj tarang jion jal hi bikhe samay. That's the easiest explanation I have, is the wave that's coming out of the water. I'm not separate from Vaheguru. I'm not separate from Akal Purkh. I never was. I took on this form. I look like I'm a thing. I look like I'm a separate thing, the same way a wave might look like it's a real thing. Jal hi bikhe samay. It just goes back into the water and it just becomes the ocean again. And so right now I'm an extension of Vaheguru that looks like this. This extension will finish and then I will go back to being a part of Vaheguru in a different form. That's all I know. Baki, like, when I get there, I'll send you an email.
So let's look at it at least at two levels. One is the physical death, and the second is what we now generally call death of conscience. Okay, so physical death, when Guru Granth Sahib talks about, when gurus talk about, is very simple. Physical death is not something which we need to be fearful of, but that's what we are most fearful of. So when Gurbani reminds us that you remember khana, pina, hasna, sona, visar gaya hai marna, that you remember about laughing and playing and decorating yourself and dressing and eating, but you don't remember that the physical death is coming. Gurbani says when you are not in remembrance of Vaheguru, of Ekko Oankar, of the force, you're already dead. Akha jiva, visra mar jao. In forgetfulness, we are already dead. In remembrance, we are alive. So now you take those two things, this creates the Sikh worldview of death. So what do? You confront the physical death or the fear of physical death. In the COVID-19 situation, it's the same thing. If you have confronted that this is happening as other things happen, as Guru Nanak Sahib already says, Ketiyan dukh bhuk sadmar, so many people are dying in pain, in hunger, in atrocities all the time. But you have been desensitized. So the reminder needs to be on about, now are you really living? Where is your consciousness? And what is in your consciousness? Zameer tohada jaag reha ki nahi, as they say in Punjabi. And that's where you see the Sikh history coming alive. This is where Shahadat needs to be seen from this angle as well. People who had confronted the physical death, their consciousness had Shabad in them, and they woke up the whole world, and they shook up the world in order to fight for certain freedoms. So those are the two deaths, and we need to deal with both deaths. One preparation is at a personal level, second preparation is for the public benefit.
This generation with funerals has been the same as with weddings, merging traditions from where they came from and where they are. You might see like Mendi and flower girls. You take a little bit from both. In funerals, you see the same thing. You see people wearing white, you see people wearing black. People sometimes don't know, like, what am I supposed to wear? My family business is a funeral home. So this is our, not just our personal journey, but also our business journey. I say this all the time. There is more focus at the funeral home than there is at the Gurdwara. You go to a Gurdwara and you go to a wedding, and everyone, including me, is talking, checking out everyone else's suit, and everyone turns to look at the bride when she walks in, and your mind is in like the 10 directions. And when you're at a funeral, if you ever have the chance, everyone is focused. Everyone is doing the same part. Everyone is captured by how temporary this life is and how fragile it is. And it's because we're all remembering our own death. A lot of us are sad because of the person that's gone, but it's so striking in that moment how temporary our life is, and nobody's talking. I've never been to a funeral where people are like, oh, who wore what, or let's turn around to see who come in. When someone is doing ardas, everyone is standing at attention. When someone is doing kirtan soila, everyone's saying it along. It's a very specific type of focus at a funeral.
Only Akal Purkh knows the comings and goings of any individual. Then only Akal Purkh knows what was really the intention of any individual, what were their aims and what were their achievements, and what they really did or didn't do whilst here. And you see that in the way that Sikhs historically have attained Shahidi. It is with a smile on the face. sometimes that sounds like it could be a little bit crazy. Like there's someone out there who is a little bit out there who when they were killed or when they died with a smile on their face. The smile on the face of a shaheed is one of all-knowingness. The shaheed is a label that we give all too readily, I think, these days. But ultimately, when it's appropriately given, the shaheed is that person who was already outside of death, who was beyond death, who is living life after death already.
For the death, for example, we have a Bani called Ramkali Sad. In Ramkali Rag, the calling, Sad. And Baba Sundar has recorded this. And this is when Guru Amar Das Pasha is telling what to do when I leave this body from this earth. So it's that direct. And really, it cannot get any better than this to describe what to do at the time of death. And there is a bit of a debate on one line of it, but most of it, there is complete agreement by the interpreters of Gurbani. It is actually saying whatever you are doing once I leave, this is Guru Amar Das Pasha telling us, is for yourself, nothing is for me. So, when we say things for people who have left, they make no sense when you think about it. But we understand sometimes people say it ritualistically, maybe sometimes they feel that way. What Guru Amar Das actually Pasha tells us to do is, he says, Kirtan karo. Do the Kirtan for what? So your mind, your body, your thinking, your emotions will find a way to accept what has happened. And in contemporary interpretation, we say, cherish the memories of people who leave. Learn from their gun. Gurbani says this. Think about their guns, their virtues, and bring those into your life. And Guru Amar Das Pasha is clearly telling us, really, Kirtan is the way to do it. Part is the way to do it, but you're doing it for yourself. So you can remind yourself about this physical death coming and clear your priorities now. Because when people remember they have a limited time to live, the decision-making becomes so crystal clear.
It's really profound and beautiful to lean into those emotions of sadness. There is a Bani for every feeling you could have around death. There's the Ram koi na kisi kera jaise tarwar pankh basera. We don't belong to each other. We're like birds on a tree. Baba bolte te kahan gaye, dehi ke sang rehte the. Where did they go? They were right here. They were in their bodies. Where did they go? Like there's shock, there's awe, there's it's just another place to be humbled. And those human emotions will always have a place in Bani, and they will always help you further understand Bani. It's okay to cry, and it's really okay to just be human in that moment and feel that, because I think that'll only increase your understanding and your love of Gurbani. I actually think, I don't know if anyone reads Harry Potter, there's these animals that you can only see once you've seen someone die. And I think it's the same way with, if you haven't lost someone and you haven't felt that shock and that awe to your system, there's parts of Bani you can't understand. And then when you understand that, and you're like, oh, they just don't exist anymore? Like, how is that possible? Like, they were right here. And then you can go back to Gurbani and be like, kahan gaye? Dehi ke sang rehte the, kahan gaye? Like, where is that Brijavan Haro? Like, kahan gaye? Oh, you can read that and be like, whoa, now I understand that shock and awe of like, they were right here. Where did they go?
So the other thing which Gurbani, and we know this, those of us who follow protocols or customs in the community, that there is a Sohila being sung at the time of death, which is again very interesting. This is the parlance, this is the vocabulary we use. Sohila otherwise is a wedding song. But we do it when we are physically dying, because for us, death is not a time of sorrow. It might be at a particular emotional level, but why is it not? Because Gurbani says, Sadre Nit Pavan, the invitations are being sent every day, meaning the divine is calling you back, right? But what are you supposed to do? It says, I want you to come. And we have to interpret this in two ways. It says, I invite people to come, because in Punjabi customs, they say, Milkar Pavo Tel. When somebody gets married, when they come home for the first time, there's a pouring of oil going on. And in Gurbani, they say, I want you to come that day when I'm going to meet the divine. So there are two elements. This is basically said, this is why we read it every day. not just at the time of death, the Sohila, that when you go to bed, your hope is tomorrow is the day I'm going to meet the divine. An invitation is to people to come that day, not when you die. And then when we invoke it at the time of physical death is, how are you thinking about this? This death has occurred. Do you want people to come and pour this oil? Do you feel that you have actually connected to the divine? And those are the two things going again together from a physical angle and a metaphysical angle. And each individual is asked to think about death at both levels.
My Babaji had lived a life of a very colorful life. So he had done it all. He had taken Amrit, and he had also been a young man that was drinking, and like he had experienced the full spectrum of life over 90 years. And he was like, I know Baba Nanak is going to come get me. And it was just like, when he said it, it wasn't like, oh, do you believe in God or do you not believe in God? When you heard my Babaji talk about Baba Nanak is going to come get me, you knew it was true. And so I think faith matters. And I think looking towards death optimistically and looking at it without, with a healthy fear, but also not without like disdain or just heaviness, I think that's a really good thing.
I mean, I just went through this. My grandmother lived with me, my Dadiji, we called her Maji. She lived with us, actually with my family, for last decade plus. And she lived to be 101. Her name was Bhagwan Kaur. I mean, literal Bhagwan, God. And I saw godly qualities in her. When she left this earth, during COVID days, but not because of COVID, about a month ago, you know, it's emotional because you miss the individual. She actually had raised me. When my mom was ill after giving birth to me and my younger brother and my elder sister, she was quite ill for several years, 2 decades. So I was raised by her, you know, and then she raised me, she raised my dad and his siblings, then she was raising my children as well, you know, Jodha Singh and Gani Kaur, while Gurpreet Kaur and I were trying to raise them. It is emotional, and it's okay to be emotional. Gurbani does not say not be emotional. In fact, Gurbani says कि जेडे नैन ने रस भिन्ने हो जाते ने, that we do have emotions when their eye is messed up. But Gurbani also reminds us, Jini pachata hukum tin kade na rovna. Rovna is not physical crying. Rovna is complaining and whining. So, you know, this is where individuals need to think about. We have our own ways of grieving, and no way is wrong. But when it is done for public spectacle, when it is done because the community or the custom expects it, that's the problem in Gurbani. Nothing wrong with displaying your emotions. Nothing wrong with grieving the way which is for you. But we need to be very cognizant of that let it not be a pretense for the community or for the family or for whatever else reason you might be doing it for.
Whether my judgment of you in this life has been good or bad, even if you're Indira Gandhi, I think Indira Gandhi returned back to some form of Vaheguru. What her justice was or what happened to her afterwards, I can't speak to that. I think we find comfort in ideas that people we love are okay. And I think we find comfort in ideas that people we don't like were served justice after their physical form. Whatever happens, I think we definitely return to some form of Vaheguru. Yeah, that's all I got.
I hope this space serves as inspiration and we can explore that back and forth. As we don't have centers of collective discourse, I hope these personal and Bantic questions and answers feel like they have answered some of the questions you may have